Good morning, everybody. My name is Stacy Schubitz, and I am one of the co-authors of Two Writing Teachers. And I am joined today by a couple of my colleagues, Amy Ellerman and Naval. I'm going to totally not mess up your middle or your maiden name. Can you just say it real quick? Because I don't want to mess up.
Yeah, Naval Karuni Cassiano. Thank you.
Okay, so I was going to get it right. I mean, I've known you for a year now, and I'm like, I'm not messing anyone's name up. So basically, these are my colleagues, and we are joined by 5 people who've been taking the Slice of Life Story Challenge for some since the beginning and some very recent. And so all of us are going to chat with you about our experiences. The Slice of Life Story Challenge in March started in 2008. It was an outgrowth of something that I was doing in my 4th grade classroom when I was a teacher in Rhode Island. My students weren't writing, and I really wanted to push them to write more. So I was like, let's write every day in March, and we're going to do this challenge. And I put it on to Writing Teachers, which was a very new blog at that time. And you know, like 10, 15 people joined, and it's grown. And now we have people on 6 continents participating. And it's just really exciting to hear from the people who've been doing this for a while. So Amy, why don't you start us off, then head over to Naval, and then we'll go on from there.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. So my name is Amy Ellerman. I'm an instructional coach in Golden, Colorado, and a co-author on Two Writing Teachers blog. I'm actually newer to slicing than some of the other slicers in the Zoom room today. This will be my 4th year slicing. I've also done the Classroom Slice of Life Challenge as an instructional coach with kids across grade levels, working together on the same blog. So I've also done that twice, which has been really meaningful and motivating with kids.
So I am a literacy coach based out of Chicago, Illinois. I coach in a whole bunch of schools. I was a classroom teacher for many years and a reporter before that. I'm brand new to slicing. So I just started this past year, and I did it at the urging of Melanie, who called me on March 1st and said, if you don't write today, you're going to regret it. And it was because I had told her a story about my son going to school for the first time in March during the pandemic, like in person, and me being terrified that his name would be butchered, and me making these school lunches for my 4 kids in March. And it kind of changed my whole outlook about why we need to write as educators and why we need to push ourselves. And like the gorgeous kind of like community that came from it really like lifted me up in ways that I didn't imagine. So happy to be here.
Okay, I'm Jennifer, and I teach English learners in Ohio, and I blog at ihabloespanglish.blogspot.com. And this is, I guess, my 11th year slicing, which feels like a really long time. And I've also done the classroom challenge with students several times. And it's just been such an amazing experience. The slicing community really got me excited about blogging when I first started. I was really nervous, and just the way that the community welcomed me with their comments and taught me what it means to respond to writing thoughtfully really helped me keep writing, and then really taught me how to build that community with my students. And it's just been an amazing experience.
Hi, I'm Jessica Carey. I am a literacy coach in Connecticut. I work in an elementary school. I'm also a mom of 3 young kids. I started slicing, this will be my 6th year slicing. I started when I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter. And actually my oldest daughter, who's in 4th grade, this will be her 3rd year doing the kids challenge. And we had kids participate from our school too. We made it invitational, and we kind of figure that out. And I just think that this community has helped to make me feel like a writer. I think I'm a better teacher because I'm here, and I'm just so grateful for this space.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Hodgson, and I am a 6th grade teacher out in Western Massachusetts. I guess I've been slicing since the first year, Stacy, I believe. I was invited by a friend of mine, Bonnie Kaplan, and it was an opportunity to connect with other teachers and write every day as well, for the month of March, but then extending through the course of the year on different days of the week as well. And it really fit nicely into my thinking around teachers as writers and how we need to be writing ourselves and think about ways that we write and bring some of that into the classroom with our students, and think about the process that we go through and the techniques that we use as well. It's also allowed me a lot of experimentation with writing. I mean, I've done audio slices and visual slices, and last year I did I think it was a day in a sentence I did every day. And so I'm always trying to kind of mix it up and experiment a little bit. The idea of connecting with a community of writers is really a powerful incentive, I think, for a lot of teachers, hopefully, to think about the support that you can get with your own writing and then how it informs your instruction as a teacher. Early on, I was, my first year, I became a member of the National Writing Project. And so the ethos of the NWP around teachers as writers fits so nicely into the whole slice of life community that it just has been part of my kind of writing life and teaching life for a long time. So I've really appreciated that.
I'm not sure whether it's me or Sharon next. Okay. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Melanie White. I'm an English and Fine Arts department head in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I actually got invited to the Two Writing Teachers blogging and slicing and the March Challenge by my podcasting partner and colleague and good friend, Amanda Potts. And I started about 3 years ago. I was not as committed in the beginning as I am now, where I feel this deep sense of meaning and purpose that has come from finding my own writing voice. And then what that has done is allowed me to take it into the classroom. I've learned a couple of things in that sometimes when you have no ideas, that is the best place to begin. And because I felt that struggle, I was able to help 2 students really specifically this year. And I found that they produced the most meaningful metacognitive writing ever. I think they valued that opportunity to find a voice. And the other significant shift is that I realized feedback is best when it emphasizes the positive and that it actually builds a connection with writers. And I feel so fortunate to have recognized all the names in this Zoom room and feel a connection to each of you and value your voices. I feel like I've grown by reading all of the things that you post.
Hello, I'm Cheri Schmalitz, and I am at home in Vienna, Austria, where I teach at an international school. And I have been slicing for apparently 4 years. I had to go back and look, and my blog, I think, is Cheri's Slice of Life Project. And I am a physical education specialist. I am not a teacher of writing, but I am, of course, a literacy teacher because I speak and we talk and so we're using words all the time in my classroom. So writing for the month of March and sometimes throughout the year, it has been fabulous because I keep coming back because of the community. And same Melanie, I mean, just when I look at who's in this room, I'm like, oh my gosh, look. It's really exciting for me. So for me, the Slice of Life Challenge has been amazing for growing my writing enthusiasm. It's really been a place for me to experiment and play. I play with writing when I know that I have to do it every day, because otherwise I think I would just go mad. So I'm really, really happy to be here, and it's just lovely to see all of you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. I want to start with Multi-Lit Friday, which was something that we infused into Slice of Life last year on Fridays at the urging of Jennifer. Jennifer, Naval, can you speak a little bit more about this since you both participated in it?
Yeah, I would say that I'm just so grateful to Jennifer for bringing this idea to life, and kind of forcing me to think about how I translanguage and insert Farsi into my English writing. My parents are both born and raised in Iran. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so Farsi was my first language. And it's interesting as a writer to think about how I have compartmentalized. And so this allowed me to not compartmentalize. Not only did I try to post completely in Farsi on Multi-Lit Fridays, but then I also just mixed it up. And so what that did was help me empower my students and my teachers to then, have kids bring their full repertoires of language to school, to writing, and not just like you're allowed to write sometimes in a different language, but we encourage you to bring all of your language to, we're not checking it at the door. I think it's just so important. And it also, you get to hear the author's voice, right? Like in a different way. I thought that was such a gift. Jennifer, what do you think?
Yeah, so it was really exciting to see how many people ended up participating. So I'm bilingual in Spanish and English, and a long time ago, back when I first started blogging, there used to be a blog called Latina-ish, and she had a Spanish Friday challenge where some of us would write in Spanish. And when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, this is an amazing experience. And it connected me to more to my students because they're English learners, so they're always writing in their second language. And so then when I brought the classroom challenge to my students, I brought that into my classroom, and I said, hey, on Fridays you can write in your language, and they really enjoyed that. And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool if this community did that too? Because I knew there were multilingual slicers. I knew there were people who spoke and wrote in other languages in our community, and I thought it would be really neat to encourage them to do that. And it was just so much fun to see. From Naval, who was recording her audio in Farsi, and then I played it for my 6-year-old, and she thought that was the most amazing thing ever. And then Terja was writing in Estonian, and she recorded some in Estonian too. So then we got to listen to that. And then people were writing in their home languages. People were writing in their second languages, like me. There were even a few people who had just kind of were at the beginning stages of their language learning journey, and they tried out writing in their second language that they were still very much learning. And I thought, wow, that was really courageous and such a neat thing for us to be a part of. There was somebody who was just kind of starting to learn Spanish who wrote in Spanish, and then I was writing encouraging comments to her back in Spanish, and she told me how much that meant to me, and it was just such a neat experience. And so I hope it can grow even bigger this year, and it's just a really fun thing, like Naval said, to be able to bring our whole selves and all of the languages and cultural experiences that we carry into our writing. It's really powerful for students and for us as teachers too.
So thank you for that, because I one day I'm going to be brave enough to participate, but I used to be, I don't want to say bilingual, but pretty close to it in French, and then I lost it over time. So maybe I'll get the courage to participate one Friday. I don't know. We'll see. You'll have to nudge me again. So Kevin, you were talking a little bit about different ways that you have tried out to like generate ideas for writing, different technologies that you've used. If you could speak to that, and then anyone else who wants to jump in who may have done something that was different than just the typical, I'm going to write my blog post, it's going to be in paragraphs. I would love for you to share that.
Sure. So I think it's related to what Cheri was saying, actually, that it was trying to find ways not to do the same thing every single day. I do write every day, so the slice kind of fits nicely into that. But I think I've always tried to experiment with what writing could be beyond just the stories on the page, which is powerful in its own way. So I think that when you're in a community like Slice of Life or whatever community of writers you might be in, the ability to try different things. I'm just thinking of what Jennifer's just talking about. Opening up the invitation, I think, to people to try things is really important. And then having a supportive community there that reacts to it and gives feedback and and shows that there's an audience, I think can be really powerful. And I mean, those are all lessons that are really important for our students too, that they're not just writing, you know, that audience changes, and maybe the way that you approach your writing changes based on the audience that might see or hear or watch your piece of writing that you're doing. And so I think over time, I think one of the earlier slices I did, I was trying to remember the other day, was actually I did an audio with my son who's now 24 and I think we were reading the Lorax. It was just so long ago that I actually was trying to find it the other day, probably in a file somewhere. But even then, I think that idea of, I'm just thinking what they were just talking about, the multi kind of lit, is that idea of authors, like literal author's voice into the mix, I think is a really nice, powerful kind of way to connect writing to the listener slash kind of reader. So, you know, even if somebody might be trying to figure out how can I experiment a little bit, I think that there's some, you know, fairly simple, accessible kind of audio recording software that requires no logins or anything like that. It's just, you know, you push the button and you're talking and then you share the link, and that might be a kind of easy way for somebody who might want to try audio to experiment with the Slice of Life this year and try it out. I think it can be a really powerful way. I also think like using images and you're trying to represent, you know, what it is you're trying to say in different ways. Visual can be really powerful as well and add a whole different texture to the kind of writing that we're doing. And I guess I meant to say too earlier that, you know, one of the things I really love about Slice of Life is that it really, one of the things I'm always thinking about, okay, what are the smallest moments of my day, you know, when I'm in that kind of, in those kind of times, and then trying to really pay attention to the world in a very, very specific way that allows my writer sense to kind of get a sense of, okay, how can I now make this small moment something a little bit bigger? And I think that's just like a magical gift to remind ourselves, not just in March, but to do that more often, because I think me often forgets that. And so I think having reminders of that and being a community that does that as well is really powerful.
Naval, can you talk a little bit about some of the recordings you did last year, and also maybe some of the software that you used, or not software, but how did you do it so that other people could try that as well? Like, I know when I do audio slices, I use SoundCloud. I don't have a SoundCloud like people talk about, but, you know, I mean, I will embed SoundCloud as my way of doing it. How did you do it?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been playing with is adding recording into the parts of the writing process for students in general. And so after they draft, feeling like they can record themselves, hear how they had intended it to sound, and then make revisions before. So it's not just like for the final or for like a published piece, and just inserting that as a tool. I also think that kids, when I do this in classrooms, you know, our youngest kids are more sophisticated sometimes in their just like language repertoire than what they can put letters, match letters to sounds and put it on paper, right? So if they can orally record it first, and you know, what you can think you can say and what you can say you can write, I think is just like a really powerful understanding for kids. And so I have been doing a ton of recording in the classroom too. And the simplest, easiest way to do it with teachers and with students is just Google Voice Recorder. I like put it in the browser. It's super easy. You could also use Google Mote, but it downloads it as an MP4, and it's just a file, and you upload it to your blog. I meant to mention that my blog is nqcliteracy.com under my reflections. But the cool thing about recording is also, especially for multilingual kids, when you hear how it sounds reading your writing, are so many places where you wanted to change it, where like you realize how you wanted it to sound differently. And so then you can go back in. It was the best tool for me, actually, in terms of revision. So I use recording as a revision tool in that way.
Awesome. So here's the $64,000 question. Why should teachers, whether they've done the challenge before or they're thinking about jumping in for the first time, why should teachers do this in the midst of an ongoing pandemic when everyone is just feeling exhausted? What would be the benefit? What is something that keeps you coming back?
I'll say a lot for me. I think it's about it creates a presence, right? That I keep showing up for myself and then for this community. And it's not, it's not just because it's a reciprocal thing, I'm contributing to the community. And in that sense, the community also is holding me together. So, and it's, and because you have a start date, you have an end date, right? So it's absolutely achievable in the sense, even if you're thinking, man, every day, seriously. But again, there are ways that you can approach it that just finding ideas. But I think it's really, for me, it's about showing up for myself and realizing that I am, even as I am receiving from the community, that I'm also contributing to the community.
I think it's for me as busy, I think we're all busy, and I just feel like in this moment in our lives, everyone's got so much on their plates, but for me it's a moment of self-care. I have just found it to be a gift that I find time in the day where I get to write, and then those gifts and those things that I've written are such a treasure. Like later on, I lost my grandma this year, and just going back to read the slices that I had written about her are like invaluable, like having had those stories. But I also think I'm so lucky that I have colleagues that also slice. There's like 6 of us in our district, and it's slowly growing. And just that in the month of March, how we feed each other. And I think back to what Kevin said, that gift of like living like a writer, just like looking around every day and seeing the world differently. I also think that's what we give kids, that we can help kids to become those kinds of writers.
I feel like I would add, for me, it's energy giving, and it's sort of that counterintuitive. It seems like it's making you more busy, but the way that it fills you up is worth the time. And then the other piece I would add is I think kids are really savvy, and they know which teachers really write and which teachers really read. And when you are a writer and you're living that life, the way that you can engage side by side with young writers as you talk with them and confer with them and teach them is so different, and they know. And it changes the relationship.
I also think that we demonstrate for our students that we give time to what we value. And so if we're modeling this, we're showing them that we actually value a writing life. I was listening to Catherine May's book, Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. And that is such beautiful writing. She mentions at one point that some ideas are too big to take in at once. The writing every day in March means that even if I spend 30 days writing about the same thing, I'm going to continue to revisit and approach it in different ways. And I think actually now it's more necessary that we think purposefully about how we spend our time and what we do in a pandemic than ever before.
For me, I think the community and authentic relationship aspect of it, especially during the pandemic when we're all kind of still longing for more connection and feeling even more disconnected from each other than before, is just huge. I mean, the years that I've done the challenge with students in my classroom, the way that our relationship from me teacher to them students, and the way that their relationship with each other has changed through really showing them how to leave thoughtful comments to each other, the way that the energy in the classroom has changed to like, we're all writers and we're all doing this big hard challenge together, to be able to come in and be like, oh my gosh, you guys, I couldn't figure out what to write at all last night, and so I ended up writing this post about how I couldn't think of anything to write about, versus like showing them a post or having them come in and leave comments for each other and then being like, hey, you guys, did you see what Matthias wrote the other day? Or, oh my gosh, did you see what Sajida put on her blog? And the energy that it builds, like someone else mentioned, energy in your classroom is just so powerful. And especially in this pandemic time, like the power of community and the real relationships that you establish. I mean, I have people that I consider my friends from this slicing community that I've never met in person. And now all of a sudden we're Facebook friends. And because we spent all of these Tuesdays and all of these marches sharing about each other's lives and like like leaving those powerful comments to each other. And it's just such an incredible experience of like our shared humanity and like the power of human connection and the way that stories can bring us all together, and the way that writing is a part of that. It's just like completely life-changing. And it's, especially right now, I think it's exactly what all teachers and all students need.
Awesome. Well, if those aren't testaments, I don't know what is. So before we close, Jess, can you talk a little bit about your community in Westport? Peter was on the previous call, but if you can talk a little bit about how you mobilize the kids for the classroom challenge. I know it wasn't something that was done in the past couple of years because of the pandemic, but if you can speak a little bit to the classroom challenge, that would be awesome.
Of course. So Peter was a 5th grade teacher, and we invited the 5th grade team. We just said to kids, and we, really went to certain kids that we were like, oh, these kids are writers. This is right up their alley, but opened it up to everyone, invited them in, and some kids wrote every day and some didn't. We made space throughout the day, like where they had time in the school. So they could come in during recess if they wanted to like our computer lab, and they could use that space for writing. And we set them up. This year, our 4th grade team right now is in the midst of a notebook to project. So they've really just gotten back to like notebook work and are working on some notebooks to projects. So we're already talking about like, how could we keep them going before April on Tuesday? So maybe we could just get them starting to slice on Tuesdays. And so hopefully then we'll have some kids by April who are really interested. I think it's just like picking out those kids, like seeing kids and noticing like who are the ones that this could really matter for. And just, sharing that this is a possibility. And that's sort of just how we've done it. It's never been a have to or an assignment, but purely invitational.
Stacy, can I just add one thing to what Kevin and Cheri were saying earlier about the power of play and the idea that like Cheri is a physical education teacher / all of us are literacy teachers because we communicate. I think that it's really important to provide space for writing and composing and communicating in like a non-evaluative, purely cathartic at times. Think about who those words are for at times. It might just be for us. And so if we like are creating that, it's just like creating book joy and book love for students, like read what you want for you. It's not because I'm telling you, like that needs to come alive in writing as well. And I think this is like an amazing space for it. So the idea, like Kevin said, of just like visual composition, right? Or like, I don't know, audio composition. It's all writing. That's all considered writing. It's all literacy, right, Cheri?
I also want, oh, sorry, go ahead, Cheri.
No, I just want, thank you, Naval. I do want to add that for me, I blog in a bunch of different places, but there is something specific about slicing that has really sparked my own creative process. So, in 4 years, I have an archive of things that I actually am amazed that I wrote that. And that's another piece of, thinking about as we create, that we're creating an archive that we go back to, that remains, right? That also then becomes a form of, that can be generative. So I just think there are just so many advantages for us as educators, as humans, that we really can benefit. So, yeah.
I think that if I could just jump in, I think that goes back to your question, Stacy, about why now in the pandemic is slicing, and I think it's a curation of kind of the experiences that we're in, which can be generative for writing and reflection, and that you can go back to in 3, 4, 5 years and say, of course, I'm sure we'll all remember this time that we're in, but we may not remember the day, that day. And so I think that as educators and as our students too, we talk about them like, let's find ways to document the life that we're in right now, because, this is an unusual time and we want to make sure that we remember and kind of what it was like when you're looking back on this time. So I think that question of why now, that could be, one of the answers for somebody thinking about, should I do this or not, kind of thing. is that it's a part of the curation of our of kind of who we are in this time. And also just, you know, a curation of our digital lives, which is just scattered and all over the place. And, we're writing things here and there and things get lost so easily, at least for me, that, having a home, I think, for some reflective writing seems really important to me and has been for a while.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming today and for spending part of your weekend talking about this writing community. I truly appreciate it. I'm going to close out our recording now, but if everyone can just hang on for a minute, that would be great. So for anyone watching, I hope that you'll join us this March for the 15th annual Slice of Life Story Challenge. You can go to twowritingteachers.org to learn more, and we hope to see you in March.